I spend a lot of time focusing on like why people do the things that they do, like really at the core belief. Like they call it first principles. But like, yeah, you just try to figure out like really like what is motivating people. And this skill translates to patient care as well, like when you're trying to convince somebody who's addicted to drugs to like take their medication, or like to go on a walk, or to like not smoke a cigarette, right? Like figuring out like what motivates people is a skill that's going to help you in resume writing, interviewing, and then like in the patient care setting. So like the time that you spend is valuable. It's not just valuable for getting a job. So like my fundamental beliefs about resume writing is starting with the question of what's your narrative? What's the story that you're trying to tell about yourself? Maybe it's like that it's your second career, you have all this like wonderful related work experience, or maybe you have that CNA experience, you have that OR tech experience, or you have like all this related healthcare experience, so you understand the system. Or maybe it's that you're a 4.0 scholar, you know, like super involved in the community, and like maybe that's your narrative too. But just like figure out like what you're trying to say before you start writing your resume. And so like my narrative is that like I said, like I'm all about efficiency. I think a lot about problems. Like I spend a lot of time thinking about like how things work, and then my core fundamental belief in everything that I do is that time is our most valuable commodity, and you'll learn that with patient care, seeing people that are at the end of their time, and then you'll learn that working with other nurses when you're trying to get them to do something and then they don't have time to do it. Like you learn really quick like how valuable the time is. And then same thing with nurse managers, right? Like think about where they are, like in HR. Like an HR person is getting thousands of resumes, right, for like less than 100 jobs, maybe. It might be even a worse ratio, right? And then so like, how are you going to make it so that they're not wasting their time when they look at your resume? And I'll talk about that a little bit later, but just think about that. Like, what is your narrative? What is your story? For example, like another thing too that I'm really good at is like asking really good questions that like make people think like about their actions. So like a perfect example is the question, what is the point of a resume? Anybody? Just throw something out there if anybody can think of anything, right? Yeah?
I guess it's a snapshot of what you can offer.
Okay.
Basically that's selling yourself and your abilities to your future employer.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, those are good answers, but you can get even more simple than that. For me, the point of a resume is to get an interview. That's it. So like, it's not to tell your life story. It's not, I mean like, yeah, it is to give you a snapshot, but like what is the point of the snapshot? It's like, okay, if I express my snapshot really well, like Lauren expressed the snapshot of my career really well, but is that going to get me the job? Like the end goal of this whole thing is to get a job, right? So think about that, like the whole point of a resume is to get an interview, and that's it. And then so like you do everything that you can to like make your resume really, really good at getting an interview. And so then the next question is like, from thinking about, okay, the point of this is to get an interview, so like what are the steps in between now where you are like completing a resume and then getting a job? So in some huge hospitals, the first thing you're going to run into is an applicant tracking system. And I don't know how familiar all of you are with the applicant tracking systems, but you can stop me if it's boring. But basically the way an applicant tracking system works is it's a pre-filtering software, and it looks for certain keywords to rank the candidates, to pre-rank the candidates. and then it'll just throw out the rest. And then that way the human being, like the human resources manager, doesn't have to manually sort through like 5,000 like for Cedars-Sinai or something, like the huge big hospitals, like they're gonna get thousands of applicants, and it's literally physically impossible for them to manually sort through all of them. So they'll put you through an applicant tracking system. And so some of the interesting things that I've learned, like in the tech world, have you ever wondered why when you apply, you have to upload your resume and then you have to fill in all the exact same fields over and over again? Yeah, that always confused me, but I learned the answer to that question from the engineers on our team that are like way smarter than I am. So that is because of something called natural language processing, and what that means is when I put your resume through the applicant tracking system, how do I know that experience and the words after, as a machine, how do I know that experience and the words after it translate to work experience? Or the experience in the middle of one of your statements, like as a staff nurse, I had experience doing blah, 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 right? Like how can it tell? It can't see structure, it just sees words. And then so like, that is a very challenging problem. And if you go on our website, clipboardhealth.com, we make you fill out the fields too, because we all arrived at the same conclusion that natural language processing is very, very hard, and the best people in the world are working at Google that do that. And so like, thinking about the applicant tracking systems and like all hospital software, it's probably not being like updated. It's like not the state-of-the-art technology, and if it was, they would probably be working at Google. So like, think about like the applicant tracking systems in a way that's like, I really need to make this simple for the applicant tracking system. And the way that you do that is by not having any crazy fonts, graphics, like no tables, no weird non-standard fonts. Like you can go as far as looking up like the Word like common Word fonts from 1997 to 2003, like that version, because some hospitals may have that old Word version. They might still be running Windows XP, right? So like, so don't use the fancy fonts, even though it like looks really nice, because it can end up being not formatted how you think. Same thing with the symbols. Like, don't use fancy like bullet points, because I don't know if you've ever opened up like an email like in a hospital computer, and like sometimes you see like a black box with a question mark in it. That's exactly why that happens. It's because somebody sent something with like a fancy new font or like symbol, and then the computer on the other end didn't have that like installed in their library of fonts. So so you run the risk of